Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Amna Gul from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. Today is our 7th lecture for the course Communication Skills for Media, having the course code JMC 232-2, and the topic today is presentation structure. Regardless of whether your presentation is going to be delivered formally, such as at work or in class, or informally, as for a departmental welcome party, for example, you should always aim to give a clear, well-structured delivery. That is, you should know exactly what you want to say and the order in which you want to say it. Having thought about and planned a good structure will also help to alleviate any nervousness you may be feeling in the build-up of your talk. Few people feel entirely comfortable writing a presentation. There's something very scary for many people about the process of moving your thoughts from your head to paper or a series of slides on the computer. However, there are things that you can do to help yourself. These include knowing your material well and taking time to consider what you want to say. Today, I'll guide you on how to structure a presentation. We'll discuss the initial brainstorming and selection of main points to begin and end with a bang, and also a discussion on how to review and edit your work. This will help to ensure that your presentation is as effective as possible. Since clarity of ideas and good organization helps result in a lively, logical, and compelling message delivered in a confident and professional way, therefore, before you start to write your presentation, you need certain information. For example, the objective of the presentation, the subject of presentation, and details of the audience. Keeping your objectives in mind, understand the topic first and study it thoroughly. Write down all the points you wish to make, irrespective of order. You can order them later on. Then decide 3 to 5 key points and align those with your audience. By aligning those with your audience, I mean you need to keep in mind that how these points are to be explained to the specific audience you are going to talk to, because age group and other demographics of the audience change the way the thing is going to be discussed with them. Once you have selected your main points, then you can move forward to planning. What you need to plan is the introduction, which is the beginning, the main content, that is the middle of the presentation, and the conclusion, which is the end. A useful structure would be first telling the audience in the introduction what your subject is and how you have organized the presentation by stating the key elements. Secondly, then telling them the details of the key elements and or messages by expanding and qualifying the key points in more detail and providing supporting evidence. Finally, then telling the audience what you have just told them by summarizing the key points, concluding with the main subject again. An important element in structuring the presentation is determining how much information you can present in the amount of time allowed. Also, use your knowledge about the audience to prepare a presentation with the right level of detail. You don't want to plan a presentation that is too basic or too advanced. From your brainstorming notes, decide on the most important things that need to be said. If you have too much material, be selective. The body of the presentation is where you present your ideas. To present your ideas convincingly, you will need to illustrate and support them. Strategies to help you do this include presenting data and facts, reading quotes from experts, relating personal experiences, providing vivid descriptions. And remember, as you plan the body of your presentation, it is important to provide variety. Listeners may quickly become bored by lots of facts, or they may get tired of hearing story after story. Thus, arrange the key points in logical order and expand them with supporting material. Discussion, argument, analysis, and appeal. If you are hoping to persuade people, then it is advisable to address potential objections within the presentation so that you present a reasoned, well-balanced view. Once you have prepared the body of the presentation, decide how you will begin and end the talk. Yes, first you deal with the body of the presentation and then you decide upon the beginning and the ending. This is one of the key tips. Make sure the introduction captures the attention of your audience and the conclusion summarizes and reiterates your important points. In other words, tell them what you are going to tell them, then tell them what you just told them. So this is how you go about it. Once again, with this slide, the body of the presentation needs to have these 4 things: data and facts. Whatever you are talking about, whatever your points are, the argument needs to be backed with data and facts. You can add in quotes from experts to make it more appealing and to make it more convincing. Personal experiences are an excellent option to add in, and then once again, vivid descriptions. They help a lot. The introduction should give a preview of what you are going to say and should gain the attention of the listeners with a statement of purpose. During the opening, you want to clearly present your topic and the purpose of your presentation. Clearly articulating the topic and purpose will help the listeners focus on and easily follow your main ideas. During the opening of your presentation, it is important to attract the audience's attention and build their interest. If you don't, listeners will turn their attention elsewhere and you'll have a difficult time getting it back. Strategies that you can use include making the introduction relevant to the listener's goals, values, and needs. Asking a startling question or series of questions to stimulate thinking. Sharing a personal experience. Beginning with a joke or a humorous story. You can also project a cartoon or a colorful visual. Make a stimulating or inspirational statement. Relate some amazing statistics. Or give a unique demonstration to utilize the element of drama. These are some of the options, and it depends solely on the presenter how he or she wants to use these options and which is more natural to that person. So it is you, the presenter, who decides how to go about the opening. Some people are too good with humor, while others actually like statistics. So it is on you. Can you do the drama? Then you can go for the drama. If you're not that kind of a person who can play with humor or who can dramatize things, so it is better for you to go for a startling question, for example. You can decide what is more suitable for you. You know your strengths better. Most importantly, think about using stories to get your message across. We are hardwired by thousands of years of evolution to listen to stories. Even in our religion, we come across stories in different books. Stories help us survive by reminding us about important behaviors. We therefore tend to remember them much better than a dry list of facts or bullet points. There are two aspects of this. First, you should try to think about your presentation as telling a story to your audience. What is the point that you are trying to make? And how can you best get it across? Second, it is helpful to use stories as part of your presentation. For example, if you start by telling a story or anecdote, it will act as a hook to draw in your audience. You can also use stories to illustrate each point you want to make. Of course, your story has to link to your main message because you can pretty much guarantee that your audience will remember the story much longer than the conclusion. During the conclusion of your presentation, reinforce the main ideas you communicated. Remember that listeners won't remember your entire presentation. Rather, they'll only remember the main ideas. By reinforcing and reviewing the main ideas, you help the audience remember them. This is known as sandwich effect, simply meaning to repeat your opening and your conclusion. So, your presentation is that way that the beginning and the ending are more or less the same things. However, the conclusion should repeat the main points, but this time try to use different words and summarize the main point and argument. And decisively, so that no one is in any doubt that your presentation has finished. You may use a relevant quotation for an impressive ending. This is also the time to ask the audience whether they have any questions. The structure and content of your presentation will of course be unique to you. Only you can decide on the best way to present your message. However, you might like to consider what is known as harnessing the power of 3. In public speaking and rhetorical debate, as well as in much communication, 3 is a magic number. The brain finds it relatively easy to grasp 3 points at a time. People find 3 points, 3 ideas, or 3 numbers easier to understand and remember than 4 or more. You could therefore structure your presentation using the magic number of 3. For example, your presentation should have 3 main elements. That can be the introduction, middle, and conclusion. Within the main body of your presentation, divide your key message into 3 elements and then expand each of these points into 3 sub-points. If you are using a visual aid such as PowerPoint, try to limit the number of bullet points to 3 on each slide and expand on each of these as you go along. A sample presentation structure could be having the opening that captures audience attention and leads into the topic of the presentation. Then the body, where you have main point 1, which is followed by its subpoints and supporting material. Then main point number 2, followed by its subpoints and supporting material. Then main point number 3, followed by its subpoints and supporting material. Finally, the conclusion, which can have a review or summary of the whole presentation, and you can also have a call to action, or you can end up with a memorable statement, as I mentioned earlier, that you can use a quotation. You need to decide whether to illustrate or not. Most talks benefit from personal anecdotes, real-life situations, or hypothetical examples to bring them to life. If the presentation is short and informal, it is probably not necessary to use any visual aids. Use visual illustrations if anything requires expanding, clarifying, or simplifying. Illustrations of any type should be relevant and fully explained. Bear in mind that a talk will last longer if visual aids are used. PowerPoint or other presentation software is often used to support a presentation, although care needs to be taken to ensure that this technology aids the presentation and does not detract from the main essence of your talk. Do not, I repeat, do not use visual aids or PowerPoint just for the sake of it or to show off your technological competence. There's nothing more distracting than technologically innovative and pointless PowerPoint animations in a presentation. Once you have a first draft of your presentation, it is important to review and edit this. This will help to ensure that it really does not get your message across, that it really gets your message across in the most effective way. When editing presentation content, you should consider the language. Make sure what you're saying will be clear to your audience. Remove any jargon and try to use plain English instead. If necessary, explain terms when you first use them. Use short sentences and keep the structure simple. Remember that you will be talking through your ideas and that the audience will be listening rather than reading. The flow. Make sure that your presentation structure leads your audience through your ideas and helps them to draw your conclusion for themselves. Use metaphors and stories to aid understanding and retention. Yes, once again, metaphors and stories. Stories are very, very helpful. Hooks. Ensure that you have included several hooks at various points in the presentation. This will help you to get and then keep the audience's attention. The hooks might be stories or audience audience participation or some alternative visual aids such as a short video. Finally, check and double check for spelling and grammar. Make sure that any presentation slides or illustrations, titles, captions, etc. are free from spelling and grammar mistakes. Write your presentation in this order. First, the objective or purpose. To start with, get to the heart of your message by stating the purpose in a single sentence. Introduction or opening. Use a strong opening that includes something that catches audience attention and creates a powerful first impression. Remember, first impression is the last impression. So for any presentation, you need to be very careful, and this is the most important thing in a presentation structure, to plan an impressive and powerful opening or introduction. Then comes the body. A good rule of the thumb is to stick to 3 main points, as I already discussed in Harnessing the Power of 3. Emphasize why each main point is important and how it will affect them. Then stories and examples. Clarify your main points with relevant and concise examples and personal stories. Also use facts and statistics to support your main points. Conclusion. Use a strong closing with a final, memorable thought that leaves a strong, lasting impression. Once again, conclusion is also very, very important, because this is the last message that gets across, and the powerful your conclusion is, the more easier it is for the audience to remember it and it stays with them. And finally, the actual writing of your presentation is really the final stage of your preparation. I mean preparation, not presentation. If you have done your homework well, you will already be clear about the reason why you are presenting, the subject matter that you are presenting, and the main points you want to make. Actually, putting it down on paper should therefore be relatively straightforward. So the only thing is, if you plan it well, if you go through it well, and then you jot down your points thoroughly. Once brainstorm all your points, then you can pick and choose which goes in, which goes out, what is the sequence. But once you have done your homework well, then you start writing it down, and then you assemble that. It helps a lot. This is all for today. Thanks a lot. All the very best.